2, 1. There we go. Welcome everyone. Happy Friday. I'm so excited to be hosting today's chat with you and can't wait to get started. So in case you haven't joined a chat with us before, or maybe if this is your first one or you haven't been back for a while, welcome. My name is Meg. I am part of the virtual hosting team here at Power to Fly, and I am really excited to get started on this this chat with Braintree. So, Braintree PayPal. So as we get going, I do just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items for y'all, especially if maybe you haven't joined us for a while. There's just a couple things to update you on. So like all of our virtual events, today is all about you. It's all about our participants, our audience members, making sure that you all feel that the time that you spent with Power to Fly is well worth it. So if you want to make sure that you get the most out of today's event and you have a truly participatory and interactive experience, please feel free to participate. You can do that in a number of different ways. We highly encourage you to turn your cameras on, share your maskless faces with everybody safely, obviously. Messy buns, furry coworkers, non-traditional office spaces, all of this is highly encouraged. Do not feel like you have to be insta-perfect to join us. I think I'm on day 4 of dry shampoo. So please feel free to join no matter your condition, as long as you are comfortable. If you have any kind of privacy concerns or anything, as long as you don't come off mute to add a comment or a question, you will not show up on the live recording of today's session. If you don't have any privacy concerns, anything like that, that's totally great. Like I said, you are more than welcome to participate. You can do so by coming off mute to ask a question or add a comment. You can also do that by putting your questions or comments into the Zoom chat. I'll be monitoring that during today's discussion. If you want to ask a question, but you want to remain anonymous, if you want to be super deep cover, black ops, no one can ever know you were here, that is totally fine. You can still participate. Just instead of sending your question to everyone in the group chat, you're going to pick that little drop-down menu and pick my name, Meg Alexander, from the list and just DM it to me privately. I'll try and make sure that questions get raised to the rest of our panel, and I will obviously keep those who want to remain anonymous. Like I touched on earlier, today's session is being recorded. So we are not only recording, we're also live streaming this to our YouTube channel and our website. So if you have, whether you join us for 5 minutes or stay for the full 60, everyone who registered for today's session will get an email with a link to rewatch the chat once it's over in about 1 to 2 business days. Now, if somebody from the PayPal Braintree family just says something mind-blowing, amazing, you can't wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative or anybody, so sorry guys, dogs, in case you can't wait to share it with somebody, no worries, you can still you can check out the YouTube stream, which will be, our YouTube recording will be up usually within about 5 minutes of the end of today's session, and you can always share that link around, or you can check it out on our website, and it'll probably be there within, I would say, about a day or 2. So if you, like I said, if you do check out our YouTube page, that's super great. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel there. We are at Power to Fly. I highly recommend it if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on great chats like we're having today and you don't want to clutter up your inbox. It's a great way to make sure that you don't miss anything. You can also keep up with us on social at all of our various links. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. So please feel free to do that. And yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. So let's get started. Oh, last but not least, if you do want to come off mute to ask questions or comment, please try and make sure that you are not interrupting another attendee or interrupting one of our guest speakers. I tend to prattle on, so if you want to ask a question, please feel free to interrupt me. And if you are, feel free to come off mute to do that question, to ask a question or comment. But if you are not actively speaking, make sure that you go back on mute just to maintain audio clarity. You'll see that I do this to make sure that the dog barking doesn't get annoying to everyone else. All right, so I'd love to jump in and introduce you to our group of speakers today. So Mary Pierce has successfully jump-started her career several times as a technology professional. She started in the defense industry as a software engineer straight out of college and took time off to raise 2 sons through school age. She resumed her career by starting and running a technology consulting firm, which she ran for over a decade. Taking a leap of faith in 2007, Mary moved to Seattle and began developing software while earning an MBA and running a horse farm. So clearly a lot of very different interests and expertise levels there. She transitioned into project management, leading complex teams across a large hospital enterprise. When her desire arose to enjoy travel while working, she rehoned her software development skills and then joined a fast-paced online payments company as an engineer. Today, she specializes in online credit card authentication and fraud detection, growing daily in technical knowledge and expanding her skill set. So welcome, Mary. Next up, we have Monica Gallantano. Monica is used to being one of the very few women in the room ever since her university days studying computer science. She had been working for 10 years when she put her career on hold and took time off to focus on her family. With kids in school and eager to return to work, she cornered herself into an even smaller niche. Good luck finding much support for the hashtag stay-at-home engineer moms that return to work. She found an incredibly supporting environment at PayPal 3 years ago, where she is now a senior software engineer. Monica works on crafting reliable payment services and has a soft spot for optimizing systems. So welcome, Monica.
And the slides are not moving.
Oh, so sorry, guys. That's on me. So this was Monica, my bad. Up next, we have Minnie Tangaswamy. Minnie is a mother to 2 young girls and managed getting through a graduate program during both her pregnancies while breastfeeding for her then babies. So Minnie's crushing it. Being the only one in the office to take pumping breaks and still not miss a beat at work helped her develop razor sharp focus. Traveling for work with ice bags, breast pump, and constantly scanning for clean private places to pump made her a planning ninja. I have mad respect for this. She continues to learn to balance motherhood with her passion to develop world-class payment products. Minnie currently leads merchant card processing and fraud solution product teams at PayPal and is a chapter lead at Women in Product. So welcome, Minnie. I am super excited to keep working or keep going through and introduce you, start asking questions to this wonderful team. But I want to be sure before we move on, I do touch on PayPal's Power to Fly page. So PayPal and Braintree have the same page at Power to Fly. I'm going to throw a link in the chat here in just a second to where you can visit this page. One thing that I like to highlight for people that might not be very well known is that if you go to this page, you can do a couple different things. You can check out more information about PayPal and Braintree under the company info tab. Under events tabs, you can check out past chat and learns, past office hour sessions, stuff like that that they've done with us. You can also check out upcoming ones so that you can know what you want to sign up for. As well as, you can take a look at some of the panels that PayPal or Braintree employees have been on as part of our virtual diversity reboot summits. The next thing you can do is you can check out that open jobs panel. Now, super important because that's where you can go to, apply through Power to Fly to various PayPal jobs. But if you go there and you just don't really see anything that would suit you right this moment, make sure that when you navigate to this page, you take a look. There's going to be a big pink follow button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Make sure you click that, especially if you don't find anything that interests you, but you are interested in PayPal or Braintree. What that does is it puts you on their follow network. It tells PayPal that you are super interested in working with them. And it also makes sure that you stay alerted when they post new roles or they have new events that they're taking part in. And that way you can stay up to date on what's happening with PayPal and Braintree. Like I said, I'll throw that link here into the chat so you can check that out. And then we will keep moving with the rest of today's questions and session. So before we get started, I do just want to flag, we have a couple, we have a big list of questions that y'all pre-submitted that were awesome. And we want to make sure that we try and get to as many of them as we can. We probably won't have time for all of them though. So like I said, whether you see your question on this list or not, if you have a question and you're here and you want to make sure that you get it asked and answered, the best way to do that is to come off mute and ask it, or you can put it into the Zoom chat or DM me directly, and that way we can make sure that we cover the subjects and the questions that matter most to you. So to get us started here with our first question, where'd my slide go? There we go. Minnie, this first question is directed at you. What are some tips on getting noticed by companies? It can be hard if you don't have the right experience to even get a call back after the application. So do you have any advice on how to get your foot in the door?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that a lot of us go through, especially you're interested in jobs, you're interested in a certain industry, and you've been kind of, oh, LinkedIn or any other portals, you see the job, you apply for it, and then it's kind of just silent, nothing coming back. One of the things that I think about when, and I've been there, I've done that, kind of like, oh, what's really going on, is a couple of things. Thinking about, how are you reaching out to those companies? Applying is one part of it, but it's also just one narrow part of, thinking about how to get your application or how to get noticed. Are there folks in certain industry? Are there folks in certain companies that you are following and you would like to kind of do an informal 15-minute chat? It's if there's a target industry, what are the top companies that you would like to work for? You can identify that, and then try to think about, are there and this requires some planning and some research and work. Are there folks you can connect with? And of course, if you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, if you send 10, hi, I'd like 15 minutes, probably one or two may reply, and that's okay, right? But it's the most important thing is, are there things that you could do to really know what's going on there and get to know the people in that? And as you leave that conversation, let's say you have, ask them, hey, this is my experience. Are there folks that that it would be beneficial for me to talk? So networking, especially in a virtual world, can look something like that. The other thing, apart from like, hey, how do you even connect with the right people? The other thing is storytelling, or talking about your own experience. Are there, if you don't have the, if it's a new industry that you're looking into, if it's a new company you're looking to get into, do you have adjacent experiences? It's not the same that, you've not exactly worked on this thing, but you have adjacent experiences. Could you get adjacent experiences either by volunteering somewhere or by working with, folks in your existing current capacity? So those are, a couple ways that I would say, like, those are true strategies that you can get to build your profile and to get more people to notice.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Minnie. All right, so to go to our next question, this one is directed to Mary. So Mary, this person wrote, I have 8 years of experience in construction and will have a degree in logistics in a few weeks. How can I make my resume stand out?
I think this is great. This is such a great juxtaposition of like a career path, because I actually worked in the construction industry. I wrote software for a couple of construction companies when I had my consulting firm, and construction is just full of logistical challenges. So, hopefully there'll be a chance to cite some really specific experiences, like estimating, critical path, planning construction projects, are really all about the logistics. And if you can tie that in, then, clearly you've been working on this career path for a while with your degree in logistics, and, any commonality you see, any opportunity to use those logistics and that experience to find efficiencies in the construction process, I think would be a great thing to call out on a resume. Whether it's, if you're looking at going into something like distribution or supply chain management, something like that. I haven't obviously explored a lot of the avenues you can go into with logistics, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to tie that experience in. So it's really great.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of taking an idea, looking at what in your background has a transferable skill, as opposed to saying like, well, I've done this exact job before. It's very helpful, especially good advice, no matter what your background is, if it's just not necessarily the traditional, straight arrow track that some people think that you really, I feel like it's one of those overwhelming, like, things that people think you need to do, but in reality, a lot of people don't, and they still are able to pursue these different paths. So yeah, great. All right, so for our next question, this one is directed to Minnie again. Minnie, could you share tips on how to identify those transferable skills? And a follow-up to this is, how do you sell your transferable skills or limited experience for a new role?
One of the ways, I can share a little bit about how, how I've identified my transferable skills. There are, and it depends on the role, the industry that you're in, communication, how important is communication, how important is analytic skills. That's very different for role to role. What I've done is think about someone that I've really admired in my profession, in my organization. Someone who has, they are not just a leader, but they solid skills and observe what they're doing. And sometimes the opportunity to observe them may not be as overlapping. I might have might be in one meeting with them, over a period of 3 to 4 weeks. But when I have that, I think about what are they when they talk. Or how are they presenting? Are they data centric? Are they data driven? And being able to observe those things, it really helps to kind of then come back and think through, what did they do great? Why were they so effective? And that's how you're able to identify transferable skills. And you will start seeing patterns. You'll start seeing patterns as people who are really good in your industry. What are some of the things that they're doing? And that's really a great way, regardless of where you are, to identify what you can take from here to the next role. And kind of segueing into how do you sell yourself with those transferable skills. Now that you've identified what those are, there are how do you talk about using those transferable skills in your resume? Resumes typically are a lot of achievement driven, right? I've done this, but if there's an opportunity, if let's say, collaborating and really having the knack of working with a large group is a transferable skill in your industry. How about, you can mention that in your resume and say, it was a complex initiative, you worked with 10 different teams. So there's ways of weaving that into your resume. There's ways of weaving that experience and, doing something else along with other organizations or even internally. But it's really knowing what those transferable skills are and knowing your strengths are key to that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, we did have a couple people writing in the chat with questions. I'm going to try and work those in as well. This person, let's see, where did it gone? Okay, Tatiana had asked, could all three of you share your stories about how you either got invited to interview at PayPal or how you ended up at PayPal Braintree? Monica, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start. So actually, I started working at PayPal after taking that 4-year career break that you mentioned in the beginning. That was not necessarily straightforward because I had moved here from a different country. I basically had to start from scratch. I didn't have a network, so I had to reflect on what's the best way to to promote myself and how can I make my resume stand out and get past the automated tools that a lot of companies use to screen resumes. So my story ties in with another great organization, kind of overlaps a little bit with what Power to Fly does, but this is Path Forward. They specifically work with people that have experience and that have taken career breaks. And that was just a really good way for me to not have to explain in too much depth the gap in my resume. So I was able to talk about the experience I already had, and not focus on why I hadn't worked for 4 years. And PayPal was partnering with that organization. And I saw another question coming about moving from a contract role to a permanent position from Joyce.
Yeah.
I actually started with a contract it was like a returnship contract. And then, after 3 months, I got converted to a permanent position. I just focused on doing a great job. And, since they were hiring, it was the perfect match for everyone.
That's awesome. For either Minnie or Mary, before we get off the contract to full-time position and ask you about your journey to PayPal or Braintree, have either of you been in the same position? Have either of you been in a contract role and trying to get a full-time job out of it?
I didn't actually, well, yes, I have done it for the same company. Sorry, my career has spanned a lot of years. So yes, I did. As a project manager, I went from being a contractor to taking a position at that company. And it was a matter of, getting to know the people while I was there, and just, working as hard as I could, not really for the purpose of getting a full-time job, but just because it was an opportunity to work on a really interesting project. And so, yeah, so they did turn around and hire me full-time after that. So I think, it definitely happens. It's a good way to go.
How about you, Minnie?
I've not been in that position, but I liked what Monica said about, like, they had the opportunity, they wanted that because the demand has to be there, right? And she focused on making sure that she was doing what the best that she could do. And it's always great when there's some the other person wants the same thing as what you want and the goals are aligned.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, Minnie. So like you said, when the goals are aligned and that the need is there, then I feel like it's a lot easier to see the contract role as a natural, like, kind of ramp up to a full-time position. I know that in the past, when I've had a similar situation that, like, I was in a contract role and really hoping for a full-time position, it definitely helped to, like Mary said, like, work hard like you would work if you had the job full-time. One thing that I was guilty of in the past is working like crazy, like very unsustainable, like output and hours, and trying to achieve over and over and over, like higher, and kind of continuously beat myself and beat my own record, which is not bad, but setting that kind of unsustainable and impression doesn't really give the person a great idea of how you're going to actually be in the role. And if you were to get it, that's not something you can keep going and maintain. I think it also helped to be very upfront of, like, if the company is not offering, like, upfront, like, hey, this is going to hopefully turn into a contract role. In my experience, and hopefully Monica and Mary can speak to this, it was very helpful to say, like, hey, I noticed there's no posting for full-time for this, but I could see that you guys could use this, as a full-time position. Is this something that would interest you? I'd be interested in coming on full-time to help with this, and here's how I think I could be contributing to the team. So I don't know if either of you had that same experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was working on a team that was very mixed between contractors and full-time. So yeah, I think putting the word out there that you are interested, definitely. You just never know when those positions are going to open up. So if you can position yourself, that's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody can help you if they don't know what you're actually trying to do. So, exactly. I feel like sometimes it feels almost like dating, where you're like, well, I don't want to come on too strong, or I don't want to make the wrong impression, or just playing it cool. I mean, I have also been out of the dating game for like more than a decade, but like, I just don't think anybody's well served by not telling anybody what they want or what they're trying to go for, and then just hoping that they get it. So yeah. Okay, we have some really great questions coming in the chat, so we're going to try and keep going through those. Kathleen had written in saying, I'm currently working in retail to generate income. How do I handle this on my resume and LinkedIn while I'm looking to get back into medical coding after being out of that industry for a couple of years? Did anybody else do this? Like take a job that was way outside of your field, or work at, work in something part-time that was, paid the bills, but was not necessarily something you actually wanted on your resume?
Not necessarily. I tried, so I did a bunch of unrelated things. While I was trying to build a network here and, to put the relevant things on my resume, I did volunteer work. I worked as a volunteer computer science teacher with another amazing organization called TEALS K-12. With, they partner math teachers or science teachers that don't know computer science with people that have experience in the industry. And, I worked as a volunteer for 1 year. It was, it's not exactly the same scenario, because I was only doing that to build my street credibility.
No, I feel you on that. Mary, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking I did a number of things when my kids were little. I put up road signs for companies and I mean, things like that. But I'm just thinking for something like my software, I was able to do that part-time. And I think maybe medical coding, I don't know too much about it other than, touching it with the healthcare industry. But maybe, if you can find a part-time, something to stay current in it, just to keep the skills up, that would be great. I know some industries are more conducive to that than others, but maybe that's an option.
Yeah, absolutely. Granted, I don't have the tenure that Mary has, but I have a very similar background in that I have worked in a lot of different industries, everything from manufacturing to legal to audiobook publishing. It's all over the map. For me, it wasn't a break from work, like, to take care of a family so much as it was graduating into a really terrible economy and needing a job. Plus, art history degree, never been used. It's awesome. So for me, what worked was a couple different things. I took jobs that worked. I mean, like I was a bartender and a waitress and a nanny and, pretty much everything under the sun, a dog walker, all kinds of stuff. When I was still applying at that point, I was still applying for paralegal jobs. What I did was focus on those transferable skills, but make sure that what I was focusing on was kind of like the soft skills. So like skills that you develop while working in basically any job or just being a person in the world that are really transferable. So things like, being good at planning or multitasking or understanding like your own limitations. So you're good at, managing your own time. Things like that were really helpful to like highlight. The other thing is, depending on the job and depending on the gap in your resume, you don't always have to put everything that you're doing on your resume, especially if you have a longer job history. And so you're not only listing 2 places, or if you especially if you held it as like a side hustle or something while you were raising your family, it's just not necessarily something that you have to include. But like Mary had said, the other thing that can really help you is kind of keeping your hand in the pot a little bit. So, making sure that you are either volunteering in some area that really keeps up the skills for the job that you are going after, continuing education to show that you're staying abreast of like, new changes to tech, that kind of thing. Zakia is talking in the chat about learning a lot of soft skills and customer service, despite that not being what they want to do the rest of their life. And I can absolutely feel you on that. Lots of retail in my background too. And Joan's actually coming in saying recruiters don't look at long resumes. So if you are worried about not necessarily ageism, but if you have a very long career history and you're trying to update your resume, I'll add some links in the chat here in a second. You can check out some of our past panels that we've had on resume building, as well as ageism in the workforce and in the job search that have been amazing. I get to host a lot of them. They're really, really great. Natasha, you wanted to come off mute and ask your question. Would you like to step in?
It was less of a question, but more of what everyone said. I call them gap fill positions. And yes, I think that I've had the challenge of trying to explain why that there's a gap in my resume, because who wants to know that I did Instacart, or I did X, Y, and Z that had nothing to do with my degree. But I keep them off, and recruiters will want you to kind of plug in the holes like it's pavement. And I say that things done, there are gaps. The things done don't necessarily reply, don't don't aren't relevant. And I think that it's almost sometimes it's almost like a little black eye
Yeah, like
on
having
your
to
resume.
justify what you were doing with your time or something.
I needed to pay bills. Can I pay a bill? And sometimes it wasn't what I went to school for, or what I would traditionally been trained for. So I say I personally have left those things off my resume, because I'm a marketer with 15 years. Who cares if I've delivered groceries?
Yeah. I mean, if you're concerned about the gap, and you are concerned about like the reason why you have a gap in your resume, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach that issue as well. But I mean, if nothing else, you're adaptable, you understand how to pivot, you are a problem solver, and you are not one of those people that's like, well, that's beneath me, I can't do that because blah blah blah. Like, oh, you're on mute, Natasha, sorry.
I am not the person, even when I was younger, I'm not the person who said, "Oh, that's not my job." I've never said that. And honestly, the things that I've done that weren't my job actually gave me experiences into things that kind of made me think about how to do stuff. I've been a unofficial intern in full-time positions at times to help people out, so I can see if that path that I'm thinking about is actually relevant. I call it the Forrest Gump. You got to work for free when you can, help someone on a project, help them, do something else, be a part of the conversation, take notes, so that you can see where, as your way of putting your foot into something else, even as you have a position within that company.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Natasha. That was great. Okay, so as we move on to our next question, Angela had asked in the chat. Angela says, I'm a luxury fashion designer, stylist, consultant, and I moved to Silicon Valley due to my husband's job. Unfortunately, there are no such positions in this area, but I have a number of ideas regarding potential apps, games, and stuff that are fashion related. Do you have any tips on how I could connect with interested parties to connect my interest with this new, this different industry?
I think well, nowadays I'm not sure with COVID, but previous, in normal times there are all sorts of interesting meetups happening in all over the Silicon Valley. That's what I started doing after I moved to the Silicon Valley, and I didn't know anyone. There are meetups on all sorts of topics. I assume they're now happening virtually, but that would be a good place to start. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in this area, so.
And we actually have a ton of chats in the past on entrepreneurship. I'll grab a link for that as well. Mary, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No problem. I actually had a specific thought on that just because she mentioned apps and having ideas. And I know as a programmer, when I'm looking for an app to write, it's the idea that I'm missing. So one thing you can do, I know when I needed to level up my software skills prior to PayPal, I went to Coding Dojo, which is a coding boot camp that you can find online. And if you want to contact somebody within one of those organizations and say, hey, is anybody interested in putting together an app for their portfolio or something like that? I mean, it's just a thought, and I don't know how that trade-off would work, but I know there were several individuals and companies that approached, the school that I went to, and it was a great symbiotic, project. So.
Oh, that's great. And Monica, to your point about, meetups and that kind of thing, Power to Fly does networking events pretty frequently, including every morning before each day of our mini summits. So the next one's coming up April 6th through the 9th. And we host virtual Icebreaker events where people can meet and network. And it's really great because not only do you get to connect one-on-one with somebody else, another professional that's in the same room as you, but you also get the opportunity to connect with all of the people that took part in that event via LinkedIn. So we usually have like a big shared Google Doc where you can post your LinkedIn URL and maybe like your industry and what you're looking for. Another kind of event that you could look for is something called Ask and Offer. We have hosted them in the past. I don't know that we have any on the schedule for April, but it's a situation where you go in and you say, hey, like I'm looking for this kind of help with blah, blah, blah. And I'm willing to, trade services for, I'm great in graphic design, or I'm really awesome in resume polishing and that kind of thing. So it's a really great opportunity there. Minnie, did you have anything you'd like to add?
I think it was going to be adjacent to what Monica said, like there are groups, like there's like a million, if not more, Facebook groups. I've found them to be very, very helpful when reaching out, like if you want to reach out to a broad set of people in technology. So that's just another avenue of like, hey, have I considered that?
Awesome, thank you for that. Okay, so we also have another question in the chat from Yvette Mannion. She's saying, I assume she, apologies, they're saying, my small business has been impacted by the pandemic and I have been looking to transition to a W-2 role. Any recommendations on how to position myself as a former business owner to a W-2 project manager?
I think there's a lot of overlapping, or, as we're calling, transferable skills there, right? As a business owner, I'm sure if you can highlight your planning skills, how you have brought things together, how you've thought through things, how you've executed something, and take that part of your experience and highlight, those are the common points between what you're looking to do and what you've done. Like it is a really strong point that you can, use that and build your resume.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat are talking about how they've gone to a lot of meetups. Mary, if Mary could post a link to the comment that she had added, that would be great. See what else. There was also a suggestion to check out something called Startup Grind. So definitely check that out as well. And then we had a great person in the chat, Tatiana was saying, we all have bills to pay, just like Natasha was talking about, and it should be celebrated that we take care of our responsibility instead of being shamed. And I think that's really important to kind of highlight when you're it's more of a risk, I feel like when you're moving to a new company rather than just pivoting within your current organization, but you're interviewing this company as much as they're interviewing you. So if you're being open and honest about the fact that, well, I had bills to pay, and they don't see the value in that, or they're going to like make you feel ashamed for that, it's going to tell you something about that organization. So
just a quick thing related to that, again, about transferable skills. And I remember a conversation I had with my dentist, and she was saying, I regret so much not taking a summer job where I was just waiting on people, serving ice cream. Like she was regretting not having a ton of experience in dealing with angry customers or difficult patients. So it's all about trying to extract transferable skills. Again, it comes down to this slide.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that not every, if it could be as simple as I took a gap, and you don't really have to go beyond and offer anyone explanations beyond that. You can if you want to, right? But if it's, it could be like, hey, yep, I took a gap. I took some time off from what I was doing, and leave it at that. It's only when we offer details and dig in. I sometimes wonder why, if it's not relevant, it's not relevant. Just don't go beyond that.
That's a very good point, Minnie. I think it can feel, you're in an interview situation, you're already kind of wanting them to be impressed with you. You sort of want to make sure that they're pleased with what they're finding. It's very easy to feel like you have to fill that silence. And you're right, it can be very powerful and very, very impactful to just say, well, I took a gap. Okay. you know, they want to ask questions beyond that, that's their business.
And I see Natasha saying, do you think that as women talk too much or share too much? I do think, so there's there's a perception, right? And there's a perception about like silence is powerful. Saying something impactful, short, and leaving it is just a signal to the other person, I've said it, you can move on. And women and men are, treated and penalized differently for breaks. And that's why I kind of feel like, hey, yep, I took a break, own it, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Minnie. I think that you can make these broad sweeping generalizations about like, oh, women share too much, blah, blah, but I think you're right. I think it comes from the fact that we are asked to justify things that men sometimes are not, or, the question becomes more pointed when it's being directed at a woman as opposed to at a man, which is not fair. And hopefully we're all working against this to try and make sure that we don't do the same thing and perpetuate the same stereotypes to other people later on. Okay, so let's go to our next question here. This person had asked, when pivoting to a new role, how do you accelerate to keep pace with teams and or expectations and responsibilities?
I can take this one. This really resonated with me because I just transferred on a different team starting this week. So, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm trying to accelerate to keep pace with the rest of my new team, and it's hard accelerating. I don't have any magic pieces of advice here. I'll say that it's easy to feel overwhelmed, and my strategy is to try to use my time effectively and to stay organized and focus on a smaller set of things. And then, once I get more comfortable with those, hopefully it'll be easier to have the energy to, accumulate more knowledge. And then the other, on a more concrete level, just ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that a lot of people fear being perceived as not knowledgeable if they ask questions. And in reality, no one starting pivoting to a new role will know everything. And you inevitably, you will have things that you don't know. So I'll say that the sooner you start asking those questions, the easier it is. And it helps you. It helps you, put the other people on your team to good use. Ask them so that you don't have to bang your head and against the walls and reinvent the wheel. And then also maybe something that Minnie also mentioned, just find someone that's in a similar role that you admire, and try to steal some of their tricks. Like, are they using some tools or resources that can really save you time, that kind of stuff.
No, that's great. I feel like you're right. Especially at the beginning of a job, like you're not expected to know absolutely everything, especially how that company works. So, kind of accelerating to keep pace with them is awesome and definitely something we should work to do. But it's also something that you should be able to, ask questions of your team members. Ask like, hey, how do you guys manage to do this? It's not something I saw at my last role, or it should be kind of an open and like a shared learning experience, I should say. Let's see. Okay, so we have some more questions coming up in the chat. Iris is saying, I would like to explore my passion, which is health and wellness. I'm in IT and would like to perhaps work in a similar capacity within that industry. I'm having trouble making connections with companies that I want to work for. Do you have any advice on how to find or reach out to those companies? If everybody wants time to think, I can tell you, Iris, that if you are interested in looking at those companies, check out Power to Fly. See if they have a company page on Power to Fly. You can always, a lot of times companies will have either a general listing that you can apply for to be like, hey, here's what I'm interested in. If not, you can always, like I said, put yourself on their follow network. You can follow as many companies on Powerfly as you want, and you can follow and unfollow at will. So please feel free to take advantage of that, that tool that we offer to make sure that you get to stand out from the rest of the crowd. Minnie, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would say that, if it's, think about when it's about transitioning into something entirely new, what is, do you want to transition into a new industry with a role that you already are doing, similar to what you're doing, get in the industry, and then try to look for a role that you want to ultimately transfer into? Like, think about smaller milestones. Or do you want to actually get into a role that you want to, and then kind of trying to get into the industry? It could be, all of it could happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, oh, you shouldn't do that, but also think about milestones that you could do. And that way it's manageable. And when you think about, that's how you end up making connections too. You're either in that similar role and talk to people from different industries in that same role, or you're thinking about, hey, I just, this is an industry and I want to get there, but I want to get there with the kind of domain knowledge that I'm taking from IT. So if it's health and wellness and you're in IT, like, are there specific roles, IT roles in companies in that domain that you can get into? And when you get there, as you're absorbing the knowledge, it's even, everything's about getting that foot in the door. That's the hardest part. And then you can navigate into that organization or the domain and feel like, well, actually, I don't want to do IT anymore. I'm in this great company. There's an internal opportunity. You have the people, and then you're able to make that transition.
No, it's a really good point. Think of, instead of thinking it as okay, I'm here and now I want to get there, think of it more as like, what are my building blocks? What are my stepping stones to get me from where I am currently to where I'd like to go? And I know we're here to talk about PayPal, but just as an aside, from my time at Power to Fly, definitely check out MindBody. They do a lot of the app building that enables smaller gyms, workout studios, that kind of thing, to book appointments and like book classes. I use it for my boxing gym. And then also check out Nike, because Nike has some really great stuff going on with the apps relating to their products. So definitely check that out. There's people asking in the chat stuff about like where to go, the best coding schools, that kind of thing. And I see there's a lot of people throwing answers into the chat. So I think we'll kind of work through that one just yet. Tatiana is asking, could you all share some information about the PayPal culture, like what you like most about working there, or what it's actually like to work at PayPal or Braintree?
I'd love to chime in on that one. So yeah, I joined when Braintree was a little more independent from PayPal than they are now. It's an acquisition and it's a process of kind of coming together as a company. But I am so glad that someone introduced me to Braintree. I was actually, it was a friend of my son's who worked there and said, just give it a try. And I thought that was so far out of my league because I had just come out of coding school to refresh my skills and I was feeling really timid about it. And they talked me into giving it a try. And I found that when you have a company that is genuinely interested in diversity, the fact that I was terrified to be 20 years older than anyone else applying for the job, got past that very quickly because of the culture there and the fact that, it's very encouraged to come out as a diverse person and apply for the position. So that's what I've experienced there is, it's a different kind of company. And I think I would look for that if I were going to be interviewing again. I would want to find a company with that kind of values.
Can I echo everything that Mary said? It was really a supportive environment. I loved, I love my coworkers. That's the biggest thing. And I am in awe at the diversity of experiences people have on the team. I work with so many strong engineers that didn't go through the beaten path. Like I've worked with people that started in customer support roles. And this goes back again to how do you get started in this industry if you don't have, the classical credentials. So that's one way to do it. As I was saying, I work with people that started on customer support, doing slightly more technical things there, and then eventually going into full development roles. And they are thriving. Like, not only are they excellent in their in their technical skills, but they also have this amazing they have a lot of practical knowledge about, they understand exactly the customer needs and the merchant needs. So we have people that have all sorts of degrees, not technical at all. And I really love this. It makes for a fun place to work.
I would say kind of, similar to what Monica and Mary said, we don't work very, day to day with each other, but work in very adjacent teams, very close. So I would say that curiosity is always is expected and encouraged. And at the same time, curiosity is not just like, hey, I know this, I'm sharing this, but really trying to know from others, ask the right questions, and solve things together. That's like, when that kind of environment comes together, I've never felt like, well, I didn't know this, and people might have thought I did, and I've been like asked a question, and others have come, it's like, oh, that's a good question, we didn't know that either. And then we're like, okay, let's go really find out. This is how I'm going to find out. Maybe you can try to do this part, and then bring that knowledge together. But it kind of all lies because we're curious, and we, there's the environment of encouraging curiousness in each other.
Mary, what about you?
Yeah, I was having so much fun on that. I kind of lost track of the original question.
I think you were the first person to answer the question about culture.
Yeah. Tatiana wanted to talk about the culture at PayPal and what you most like about working there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's just echoing what Minnie and Monica have said. It's the inclusivity. And I can honestly say I feel like I've never been judged about anything there. People are very open to points of view. And like they said too, people have come from so many different paths that, definitely one takeaway that I have from this job and from getting this job is don't give up. Don't assume you're going to be judged for age, for, coming back from caregiving, any of that. Give it a shot.
Okay, so we only have 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we, we save a little bit of time at the end here for our thank yous. But before we jump, I do want to try and get through one more question, because I thought this one was particularly prescient for, pretty much everybody that's joining this session. How did each of you handle starting over? This person says, after being a stay-at-home mom for 3 years, I'm back at the bottom of the corporate ladder, and it's driving me crazy. I'm capable of so much more than I have been given to do, but it's hard to prove myself, especially while working remotely in this position. So even if we don't have time for like the full explainer, how did each of you handle starting over? How did you handle, kind of getting back into the working world from being on a career break?
Yeah, I know Monica and I have both gone through this and kind of talked about it a little bit. But I think really this question, I found this a really interesting question because it's almost like I want to unpack it a little bit. There's, taking time off to be a caregiver, and then, the question about being back at the bottom of the corporate ladder, and, is it really the right role? As you're coming back, and that's really hard, I think, when you've taken some time off and you've had a chance to step back and have some perspective, which is actually a really great thing to do. But I think it's important to understand your own desire of, where exactly you want to get back in. And I know that this has got to be a really tough time to do it when everybody's going through the pandemic. And so you're not getting a lot of the usual feedback loop, that you would. But yeah, I'd hate to see anyone be driven crazy, just from this sense of not being either able to contribute as much as you'd like to, or, how do you kind of prove yourself? I don't know, for me, I feel like we need to have the perspective right now that, just give yourself space and, appreciate that you are acquiring skills, even, I don't know, I think just giving yourself space, it kind of ties in, with a lot of the different topics that we've talked about, and try not to be too judgmental on yourself. I don't know, Monica, did you have thoughts?
Um, I would also say that, if someone discounts your previous experience and gives you easier, you get assigned easier things, just make sure to do those really well and communicate, brag about your accomplishments. Ask for more. Like if you feel you're being underutilized, everyone's losing out, right? You're not being challenged as much as you would like to, and the people that hired you are not putting you to the best use they could. So I would just have a conversation with my manager and, just say, I'm capable of doing more. Put me, make the most out of me. And, again,
I think both Mary and Monica added great points. I would add, it's apart from having those conversations, it might also be able to go with that conversation and say, these are some thoughts or these are some ideas that I have, and being able to show them that, hey, this is how I'm thinking, and showcase your ability and when you offer and say, I could do more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we have run out of time in today's session. I'm so sorry. It always goes too quickly. And I know we didn't get to even half of some of the really awesome questions that were asked today. So maybe we can get the PayPal team back to finish up the questions that we still have. But in the meantime, I have shared several links where you can connect with the PayPal panelists that we had today. I've shared their LinkedIn URLs so you can connect with them. I also see a bunch of people sharing their LinkedIn URLs in the thread, so that's great. In case anybody wants to go back and grab those, I am going to leave this Zoom room open for about, we'll say 2 to 3 minutes after the close. That way y'all can go back through the chat if you want and get those LinkedIn information from people, or grab the links that I had sent. So I just want to say before we go, a huge thank you to Mary and Minnie and Monica for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your experiences. I know it's always really great to hear from people who have successfully done the thing that we're considering doing. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And I want to say, again, a huge thank you to our audience. Y'all have been great today. It was really awesome to get to speak with some of you and answer some questions that y'all had in the moment. Thank you so much. It always makes these events much more, feel much more inclusive and like we would if we were having these events live. So thank you for that experience. Like I said, if you are looking to, check out this chat or share this chat more quickly than in the 1 to 2 days it'll take to get the rewatch email, please feel free to check out our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly. And don't forget, like I said, to follow PayPal on their company page, especially if you are interested in working with them but don't see a role that would suit you. And I also shared a link to our upcoming mini summit, as well as a bunch of links where you can check out some of those events I was talking about or past chats. So hopefully I'll see you, many more of you, on future events with us or on our Icebreakers on April 6th through the 9th. They're usually around like 10:30 or 11 a.m. Eastern. So hopefully I'll see you around. And if not, have a lovely weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.